Good day and welcome inside the Red Mile Rundown. We are back after a small hiatus to chat with more Calgary Flames hockey with you all. Appreciate you for joining us and making us a part of your podcast rotation. Red Mile Rundown, episode 32. I am your host, Johnny Sopan. Alongside me, as always, my co-host, Robert Munich. How we doing, Robert?
I'm good. It's great to hear your voice again. It's been too long. My goodness, I missed you.
I missed you as well. We had a couple of weeks off there for some technical difficulties. You were moving and the playoffs were happening and life just gets really, really busy. But it's good to be back with the listeners as well to talk about the Calgary Flames. Lots to get into on the episode. Before we dive into all these things, Flames, what have you made of the playoffs thus far, Robert? All the controversies, the series that are happening, and how much are you cringing at the possibility of an Edmonton and Toronto final?
Well, you know what? For my job at Nation Network, for business, it's good if the Oilers and Maple Leafs get there. But for my own personal well-being, it is not going to be good if those two teams go to the Stanley Cup final. But yeah, dude, these playoffs have been unreal. Like the drama has just been fantastic. Whether it's all these comebacks, the overtime games, like the performance by Mikko Rantanen, like there's so much good stuff happening in the playoffs right now. I've absolutely loved it. And like watching these playoffs, I ask myself, like, how do people who don't like sports, like what do they do with their time? How do they not enjoy this? Like, this is like the best reality TV, the best drama you could possibly ask for. It's so good. Yeah, I'm loving it. How about you?
Yeah, I'm loving it too. Like, great point by you. Like, if you love dramas, well, we got lots of drama there. If you like action, there's tons of action in there. The only thing that's really missing is like romance, but we don't need that in hockey. So,
Yeah.
But it's just great to watch these games. Like, one thing that's really evident to me is skill shows up when it needs to the most. We've seen guys like Mikko Rantanen take a massive step, answer a lot of questions from people. We've seen guys like Mitch Marner step up in moments that we've not seen Mitch Marner step up in before. Nylander's on another level. We're getting weird goaltending performances from guys you didn't think would give you those. Stolarz was excellent for the Leafs for a couple of rounds. Pickard came out of nowhere for the Oilers to play really, really well. And then you get your normal Hellebuck. What is he? Is he a playoff performer? Is he not a playoff performer? Ottinger showing up in a big way for Dallas, and it's just a lot of fun. And a lot of people are crapping on the way the Hurricanes play, but if you watch them in their series, they're absolutely a force to be reckoned with. It's going to be interesting to see who wins these series and how it's coming down the line here, Robert. I'm really excited for the next couple rounds of the playoffs. But we are here to talk about a team who unfortunately didn't make the dance, who unfortunately didn't have an opportunity to play in a series this year. The Calgary Flames are done. They've held their locker room cleanouts. They've done their year-end interviews and done the whole 9 yards. So we're here now with what do we talk about now till the draft? Well, we've decided, Robert and I, to sit down here and go player by player here and give them kind of a letter grade and talk about their season and where we see them going. And there's no better timing, I guess, on our part, Robert, and no better person to start with than Nazem Kadri. He went to Twitter last night that says, always bet on, never get rid of the dogs, talking about Mikko Rantanen. And I love that from Nazem Kadri, still supporting his old teammates, showing what fired up competitor that he is. What did you make of Nazem Kadri this year for the Flames, for what he put on the ice here? And what kind of a grade do you give this guy?
You know what? I thought like his comment last night about the dogs. I'm like, I feel like he's kind of talking about himself in there too. Like obviously he's talking about Rantanen, but I also think it was a bit of a shot at the Avalanche for not keeping him too. Because
I like that.
I think one of the biggest mistakes the Avalanche made was not re-signing Nazem Kadri and spending that money on a Nichushkin. Like it's put them back big time. But that's not here or there. When it comes to season in Calgary, I mean, overall, I think you have to be really happy with it. You know, I thought he got off to a rough start. Like, you go and take a look back in like his first like 18 to 20 games. You know, he only had 9 points in his first 18 games. He was a -10, and like the underlying numbers weren't great. But then, pretty much from game 21 to game 82, he was by far, in my opinion, their best skater. Like he was really, really good. Like from December to April was just absolutely dynamic. You know, ends the season with 35 goals, a career high. He had 279 shots. The next closest Flame in shots was Blake Coleman. He had 194. So Kadri took 85 more shots compared to the next closest Flame, which I thought was pretty impressive. And another stat that kind of stood out to me was that he drew 38 penalties this year. and that was tied for first in the NHL with Tim Stützle. So, between the big time goal scoring, drawing penalties, basically carrying the offense on a lot of different nights, like he was outstanding. And I thought, like a lot of people are making a big deal about the culture and leadership and all this kind of stuff, but like you could really see it from Kadri that he brought that aspect to the table. Like he increased that quite a bit this year, and I just thought it was super, super impressive. And the one thing, like whenever I'm like evaluating these players, I always ask myself, like, where would the Flames or where would this team be without that player? And when I think about that question for Kadri, I think the Flames would be screwed without him. I think they would have been bottom 5 of the league, which honestly wouldn't have been a bad thing, but they would not have been in a playoff mix whatsoever if it wasn't for the stellar season that Nazem Kadri had. So overall, I was super, super impressed. And, the future is going to be really interesting to talk about, but just looking at the 24-25 season, I give him an A. I thought he was by far their best forward, and, him and Mackenzie Weegar, I'd probably say are their two best skaters easily.
I looked at the start of Nazem Kadri's season, and it reminded me a lot of a guy who used to play in Calgary for years and probably the most beloved Flame. He started the season a lot like Jerome McGinley used to start, slow out of the gate, but once he got going, there was no stopping this guy. And I thought that Nazem Kadri, once he got going, he didn't stop. He continually did what you needed from a guy like Nazem Kadri. He realized the position that he was in, and he led this team from the front. 35 goals, very impressive. It allows him to get a career high in that category. 67 points. It's fine. It's a fine season. Not quite a point per game, but once he got going, he was a better leader. He was a tougher competitor. He dragged guys along here, and I think he was a really good example for the younger players of this roster because he didn't ever stop. He was arguing with other players. He was taking shots on the chin for other players. He went to bat for his teammates. And I think we could break down all the numbers we want to, but it comes down for me for Nazem Kadri is one thing. He showed the type of leader that you need to get through a regular season, and he was fully ready and prepared to drag this team into the playoffs. They came up a tiebreaker short from being in the playoffs, and they owe Nazem Kadri a lot for the season and getting him that far. I too gave Nazem Kadri an A grade simply for the fact that he was the best Flame skater. He might have been the best Flame. We talked about MVP, and the arguments are going to be there for Wolf and for Weegar, and we'll get to those guys in another episode of the podcast. But I think Nazem Kadri also deserves to be in that conversation as the MVP for this Flames season, this team this season, just based on how he played and his leadership abilities. I really enjoyed watching Nazem Kadri, and for anyone who follows me on social media knows I'm not the biggest Nazem Kadri fan. He is what he is, but when he plays well and plays like he did this year, it's hard not to root for the guy, and I really liked what he did here. I love how he led from the front, shooting all those pucks to the net, funneling everything to the net, driving that offense. It's perfect. That's what the Flames need now and going into the future here. What do you expect, though, from Nazem Kadri in the future? Do we expect him to be able to copy and paste this type of season next year, elevate a little bit more next year to help get this Flames into the playoffs? I don't know. Father Time is undefeated. But, Robert, what do you make of Nazem Kadri's future here in Calgary?
It's really interesting because, you take a look at the age. He's going to be 35 years old at the start of next season. And for most guys, I think that's kind of right around the time when things really start to drop off. But Nazem Kadri has shown zero signs so far since joining the Calgary Flames that skill set's going to drop off, in a big way. And, I still see him for next season specifically. I see him being like a 55, 65 point guy again. Like I see him hovering around 30 goals, 30 assists, and having a pretty similar impact. Because sometimes when you're watching a player in like their mid-30s, like you can slowly kind of start to see them on the decline. If anything, for Nazem Kadri, it's actually been the complete opposite. He's actually been getting better, which is pretty rare to see. So in terms of like the on-ice aspect, I actually think Kadri will probably have a pretty similar season to what he did last year. The question becomes for me in his future is, with where the Calgary Flames are in their winning cycle and in their retool, does it make sense to hold on to a 35-year-old Kadri for next season when he's coming off scoring a career high 35? Like, Kadri's value, I don't think will ever be any higher than it is right now because of where he's at, because he's coming off a career year, because he's showing that all those leadership capabilities, and he is a winner. He's a Stanley Cup champion. The guy's a total winner. So like, if you're the Flames, does it make sense to keep him and continue on this path of sort of, being this retool and wanting to stay competitive while getting a little younger? Or does it make sense to cash in on this guy and bring in some young assets for him? So I think that's going to be fascinating to see how that works. A lot of people keep talking about like Craig Conroy's plan, and he's been articulate with it, and he's kind of shared his vision for the team. And like, I'm still a little confused as to what his plan's going to be heading into this offseason, because in the year-end press conferences, he made it sound like that all the veteran players are going to be back. So to me, it feels like Conroy, like he keeps saying he wants to retool, he keeps saying he wants to get younger, but are we actually going to see that? Like, is he going to end up holding on to these guys? And I really don't know what he's going to do with Kadri. If it were me, I think I would explore a trade. I would see what kind of deal is out there, because I think you got to cash in on this guy. And Conroy said in his press conference when he first got hired as GM, the most important thing is asset management. Mm-hmm. And when you take a look at asset management, the smartest thing to do would be to cash in on your 35-year-old star. I would really think it would. It would suck to do because Kadri's a fan favorite. He's worked his ass off for this team. He's a great player, but you're still looking towards being a contender 3, 4, 5 years from now, and trading Kadri now, I think, will help you get to that spot a little quicker than not. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see how it plays out. I'm curious to hear what you think they should do with him this summer.
Man, that's such a loaded question because there's so many ways you can go with it with Nazem Kadri. If you bring him back next year, you have a proven leader. You have a guy that you can count on in all situations. You have a guy that will be really good in your room and help push the guys along, and a guy that that can contribute. He may not be a point per game player anymore, but 60 points is nothing to scoff at when you're looking at a 35-year-old player. But I'm very similar to you. What is Craig Conroy's plan? He keeps talking about infusing youth into the lineup, but at the same time, he keeps talking about his core 6 leaders, and that includes Nazem Kadri, those 6 veterans, the Colemans, Backlunds, and those guys. With Nazem Kadri, at a certain point, you have to make a decision whether it's all or nothing with this guy. Do you really trust that this guy's going to hold for the length of this contract at a very similar level to this, and that he could be a leader for this group down the stretch? Because at a certain time, we're going to run out of spots for these young kids to come in here and play if you're going to continue to play all of these 6 veterans that you absolutely love and were fantastic for you this year, apart from one. We really need to know what Craig Conroy's plan is, and I think we're going to see that this summer, but I would explore a trade. I wouldn't give a guy away, though, at the same time. If something comes along that makes sense for the Flames, like they're going to get themselves a nice player that fits their 22 to 25 age range that they continually talk about and fits the future of this group, that's something you have to explore and you have to look at, because there are going to be teams out there, much like Colorado, who went out early in this playoffs, who might be looking to bring in a guy like that to help their playoff push next year and get them over the hump. There are some very disappointed teams after rounds 1 and 2 of the NHL playoffs every year that go out and they try to make these moves. The New York Rangers, what are they going to try to do to get back in the playoffs? What do the Devils want? Those kind of teams that really have the need for a player of Nazem Kadri's skill level. But at the same time, the Flames do need a guy to take over and be a Nazem Kadri for this team. So it's really a tough question to answer, because you don't know which way they want to go here, which way they're planning on going. Because for me, you've got to commit one way or the other. And if you're committing to letting Nazem Kadri go, well, then who else are you willing to get rid of? But if you're going to keep Nazem Kadri, does that mean all 6 guys are staying as well? And you're going to just try to run the same thing back? That's my biggest fear this offseason. Is the Flames saw they were a tie break away from being in the playoffs, that they're just going to try to run this back. And that's a little bit scary and a little bit of a proposition I don't really want to talk. We're not going to talk about right now. We will on another podcast, of what is the offseason plan for Craig Conroy. So for me, I would explore the trade for Kadri and a move, but I'm not just going to give the guy away, because there is value in Nazem Kadri being back with the Calgary Flames.
Yeah, and like just the one other thing that really like just kind of comes to mind for me is, I think keeping a guy like Nazem Kadri keeps this team in the mushy middle. Because if you keep him, you're just going to kind of be in that 22 to 17 mix.
Yeah, that's the fear.
Kadri's the kind of guy that keeps you competitive. He's the kind of guy like we saw this year. He scores big goals. He scores 30 goals. Like he sets up his teammates. Like he's a really good player, but because of like the players around him and the roster construction around him, like he's just keeping this team in the mushy middle. And that's like, if I'm Craig Conroy, I got to ask myself, like, what am I doing here? Like, do I want to continue to be in the mushy middle, or do we want to excel and take the next step and be a playoff team, or should we take a step back and rebuild a little bit? Being in the mushy middle is like the worst place to be, and I actually think keeping a guy like Kadri keeps you there.
And people take it as a negative way. Like, we saw a lot of Team Tank getting a lot of hate on social media after the season ended. Taking a step back doesn't mean you're wanting to tank the season. It doesn't mean you want to see all these losses. Taking a step back, in my opinion, means realize what you are and where you're trying to go and how to get there. And that's by putting yourself in a position to acquire elite talent, to know when to move on from guys. Bill Belichick, I know it's a different sport, but Bill Belichick was famous for moving on from guys a season or two before they had a massive drop-off in their NFL careers. Just knowing when to move on from players and how to bring in other talented players. It's a hard art to learn. John Huffnagel did with the Stampeders for a lot of years as well. It's a hard art to learn, but you need to try to make those decisions to better of your club and where you're going to go. So taking a step back isn't always a bad thing, and it doesn't mean that Team Tank is the right way to go either. There is a happy medium in there. It's all about acquiring your elite talent. It'll be interesting to see what they do with Kadri this offseason. Another guy in that group of 6 leaders that we always like to talk about, the guy who led the Green Jacket drive this year with an impressive minus 38 on the season. What do you make of Rasmus Andersson's struggles this year, Robert? What do we got out of Rasmus Andersson, the reports of his injuries after the season, and the letter grade that you would give this Flames defenseman?
Yeah, Rasmus Andersson basically had the complete opposite year of Nazem Kadri, where he got off to a really good start. Those first 10, 15 games, like he looked like a top pairing defenseman, and was putting up a lot of points. He looked great. And then, unfortunately, it just completely fell off a cliff for him. Like, you take a look at some of his stats. He only finished with 31 points this year. That's his worst points per game since the 1920 season. Minus 38, like you mentioned, that's third last in the entire league. Like you take a look at the Flames and you see Mackenzie Weegar's like a plus 18. And then you see Rasmus Andersson's a minus 38. You're like, how is that possible? Playing on the same team, like that's a 56 goal difference between those two players in that stat, which is pretty crazy. And you take a look at some of the other like underlying numbers. The Flames were outscored 62-42 with Rasmus Andersson on the ice. He was below 50% in basically every single shot metric. So the numbers and the eye test both would say that he struggled a lot. Like I thought, he had a lot of kind of misreads. I thought his skating was not quite where it needed to be this season. I think the injuries at the end of the year played into that for those games. But prior to that, I thought his skating was just a little bit off. But so like overall, I didn't like the season for Rasmus Andersson. I thought he really struggled, and the Flames got kind of caved in when he was on the ice. There are some things that you have to appreciate about him. Like there's no denying, like the guy cares. Like the guy's give a shit meter is very high. Mm-hmm. He played the 10th most minutes in the NHL this season, which is pretty impressive. 196 blocked shots. So shows that he's willing to sacrifice his body to win. So like I really respect and appreciate those aspects to his game. And the guy bleeds red. Like he's a Calgary Flame through and through, and you can tell he does love this organization and franchise. So there are some positives to take from this year from him, but I think overall it was super disappointing. If you could have got just kind of like a normal Rasmus Andersson season, and he gets an extra 10 to 12 points in that 40-45 point range, Flames are in the playoffs this year. If he's just a little better defensively and not a minus 38, the Flames are in the playoffs this year. So I thought he really struggled. I did not like his year as a whole. So I would give him a C. I would definitely give him a C, a below average grade. And, I was thinking about like a C minus or a D, but, just taking into consideration all the kind of positives I mentioned kind of brought that up to a C for me. So that's the letter grade I would give him.
I did have him at a D before I heard his year-end presser and the injury update from him, so I gave him a little bit of a pass. I went C- on this one for him. I like Rasmus Andersson. I appreciate him being a warrior for the team. I appreciate his love for the team. I appreciate that he wants to be in Calgary and that he wants to be a Flame and he wants to be a leader. But frankly, you need more. You just need more because on ice, it was a struggle a lot this year. He was caved in a lot of games where game-winning goals against were going in on his shifts, or a game tying didn't happen because of a shift. You just needed more from him offensively. Obviously, the points aren't there for him this year. I think he even admitted it. 11 goals. It's actually not bad for him for a career year. But 31 points is very disappointing, and only 3 power play goals is pretty disappointing for him. All that ice time and very little show for it. People will blow out the plus minus, but when you're that big into the pluses, it is very concerning. And it was a struggle for him this year. It wasn't what you want from Rasmus Andersson. It's not what he wanted from his season as well. And like you mentioned, Robert, just a little bit more from him would have gotten this Flames team, could have helped this Flame team over the hump into the playoffs. I don't want to sit here and just be negative on Rasmus Andersson and his season, because we all saw the struggles this year, because he is a warrior. He is a Calgary Flame, and it's going to be interesting. And the bigger conversation around Rasmus Andersson is going to be the future of this club. Is he a Flame long term? Is this his last season as a Flame, or has he played his last game as a Calgary Flame? This conversation on social media all season long was very polarizing. It's still happening across social media. And I keep getting asked all the time, what do the Flames do with Rasmus Andersson? I think I know where Robert goes in this conversation, but Robert, for the listeners, what does the future hold for Rasmus Andersson?
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying it all season. I've been definitely on the trade Rasmus camp. I thought they should have explored a trade for him last offseason and at the trade deadline. I think it's just so obvious that you have to move him this summer. I would not keep him into the season. Like I heard, I think it was Frank Saravelli saying that, whether you trade him in the summer or at the trade deadline doesn't matter. Well, I disagree with that. I think it does matter, because the last thing that you want Craig Conroy, like the last kind of position you want Craig Conroy to be in, is the team is playing well, say in February, and they're either in a playoff spot or they're fighting tooth and nail for a playoff spot, and you put Craig Conroy in the position where he has to trade Rasmus Andersson during the season, that's just going to piss off everybody in the dressing room. So if you're Craig Conroy, don't put yourself in a situation where you have to trade Rasmus Andersson in the middle of the year. Do it this summer. Get that distraction sort of out of the way. Make sure in training camp it's not a talking point. Like, just get it done now. Get it done between now and the draft, or now in free agency. Eat 50% of that salary. Trade him, for when his contract's like $2.2 million. Like, you should be able to get a lot for that guy at that price. So I think they'd be crazy to sign him. I think it'd be a really bad idea. I don't think he's going to age well. I don't like the last couple years he's had. I am 100% on team trade Rasmus Andersson for sure. Yeah, that's it. To me, it's not even a question.
I love Rasmus Andersson, and if you go back in the history of my tweeting and my talking about Rasmus Andersson, I've always gone to bat for this guy. Even at the beginning of this year, I went to bat for this guy. We had the conversation early in the season about trading Rasmus Andersson, and I was like, nah, I think I'd sign him. I think I would give him that contract. But you watch this season and a bit of last season, and you realize that where he is in his career, his age, what he's providing for this team is just, it's just not enough. It's just not what you need right now, given the position where the team is at. They're trying to get younger. They're trying to build a longer term solution here for the Flames. To sign Rasmus Andersson coming off of this type of season seems ridiculous to me as well, to give him a contract extension. I definitely wouldn't go 8 years with him at that point. To add him to a group that already has Mackenzie Weegar, that's going to be well into his 30s when his contract expires. And to have all these kids you have in the system coming up behind Rasmus Andersson, and I'm not just talking about the right shot guys. There's your Kuznetsov and your Solovyovs and Poirier and Yormo. There's a bunch of guys here. What do the Flames have behind Rasmus Andersson? I would explore the Rasmus Andersson trade, much like I would with Nazem Kadri, because at a certain point, these core 6 guys that they keep talking about are going to block your prospects. What is Hunter Brustevich? Where does Zane Parekh play? Where do we get time to see what Poirier actually is, if anything, at the NHL level? What is Kuznetsov at the NHL level? What do we have here in these guys? And when you have Rasmus Andersson signed long-term, you're going to eventually block someone who deserves to be up here. And it's not that I don't like Rasmus Andersson. Not that I don't think he's an effective NHL player anymore. I just think at this point where the Flames are and where they should be heading here and trying to build a younger team that could be a continual playoff team, I think it's the right move. It's all about that asset management that you talked about with Nazem Kadri. Same thing here for Rasmus Andersson. Asset management. Take advantage of the opportunity here. The draft is right around the corner, and there are going to be, like I just talked about with Nazem Kadri as well, there's going to be some teams very disappointed in their seasons. Do you think Colorado could use another right shot defenseman? Do you think there's a team in the second round here that's going to get booted out that can't use Rasmus Andersson to help boost their defensive group? And at that price, that's an absolute steal. Just over $2.5 million for Rasmus Andersson. For if the Flames swallow some money here, that's an easy price to pay for a contending team. So I'm right there with you, Robert. I think Rasmus Andersson's a good trade candidate, and I'm not saying that to say I'm going to run him out of town. It's just I think that's just where it is in a natural progression of a guy's career versus where the team is at in their progression with Rasmus Andersson.
Yeah, and like Rasmus, he's given this team a lot of good years, and he's given 100%. Them a lot of good years on this really good contract. Like, he took a team friendly deal, so he's been a really good Flame. He's been a fan favorite pretty much up until this season, and he's given the Flames, like I said, a lot of good hockey. So there's nothing wrong with moving on from a 29-year-old, soon to be 30-year-old that you've gotten a lot of good years out of. Like, you've basically gotten his entire prime for $4.5 million for the last 6 years. Like, it's really, really good value. He's been a good Flame. He's been a good member of the community, but I think it's time to move on. I think it's just kind of simple as that.
And I think if Rasmus is honest with himself, is it in the next 3-4 years, or you have a better chance of winning a cup in Calgary or going somewhere else and having that opportunity? So I think there's a lot at play here on both sides of the conversation. This next guy, I'm interested to see where you go with his letter grade, because I really am not sure what to give this guy. Even sitting here recording the podcast right now, I'm still humming and hawing over the guy. He had an interesting season. Yegor Sharangovich spent part of the year injured. He finished off really strong. His start was okay. Where did you land with Yegor Sharangovich? Because honestly, I don't know where to land with this guy.
Yeah, I was pretty harsh. I gave him a D. I thought he was really, really bad this year. You take a look at the numbers: 17 goals, 15 assists in 73 games. On the surface, that may not sound terrible, but when you start to actually watch Yegor, you kind of realize that this guy just the thing that bothered me this year is that he just brought nothing to the table. So, like, if you're a player in the NHL, you need to provide value in different aspects of the game. Whether it's you're a really good defensive player, you're a good penalty killer, you can take face-offs, you score, you hit, you fight, you're a playmaker. Like, there's so many different ways you can have an impact on a game. And I didn't think Yegor Sharangovich was a difference maker, an impact maker in any facet of the game this season. He was not a dangerous goal scorer. Like, the shot, remember his shot when he scored 31 goals? Like, it was incredible.
Yeah.
We didn't see that shot from him this year at all. We saw no playmaking. We saw no intensity, no physicality, no sort of like winning puck battles. I thought he was, I didn't think he was good on the power play. I thought he really struggled on the power play. I didn't think he was a great penalty killer. He doesn't really block shots. There's not much of like a leadership aspect there. So overall, I mean, I thought it was a disaster of a season for Yegor. And, could that be because of the injury he suffered at the beginning of the year? Like, he was just never able to fully recover. Who knows? I'm not totally sure. You'd certainly hope that there's an excuse like that or some reasons behind this down year, because, his contract kicks in next year. Like, it didn't even kick in this year. Like, his 5-year deal that pays him over $5 million a year kicks in this upcoming season. And that deal could be a complete train wreck if he doesn't turn it around here pretty quickly. So I gave him the D. I think, he really struggled this year. I honestly thought, compared to like his expectations heading into the year, I thought he probably had the worst season of any Calgary Flame this year.
We talk about Yegor Sharangovich like he lost all of this time this season. Like he didn't play for a large chunk because he was injured. He played 73 games still. So 73 games is pretty close to a full season, if you ask me. It's pretty close to what you expect from a guy here. He 32 points in 73 games, 17 goals is nice. But those 17 goals were inflated over the last 2.5 weeks of the season where he was able to score 6 goals here. I really struggle with Yegor's season because you saw at the end of the season what you wanted from Yegor Sharangovich and helping his Flames team push for the playoffs. But like you mentioned, there was a lot of games in this season where you're like, is 17 out there? Like, I haven't seen 17. And there was a portion of the season where there was a lot of people calling for him to be the healthy scratch. And then he was a healthy scratch. It's definitely a season that was nowhere near expectations for Yegor Sharangovich. It fits this one good, one bad season he has going here in the National Hockey League, where he plays good really one year, and the next year he can't follow it up. So if that pattern holds, the expectations next year for Yegor Sharangovich should be massive because that's his bounce back season. But you can't have an NHL career doing that. It's just not effective. You need to be effective. You need to find a way to incorporate yourself into the game more. This is a guy who should be playing upside Nazem Kadri and Huberdeau and scoring 25 to 35 goals a season. And we're just didn't see that this year from him. Other players have stepped up and were able to do that, but he left a lot to be desired. I'll go with the C- grade, I think, after talking my way through this here. Just, you liked the end of the season. You just didn't like the consistency you saw from him. That contract kicks in, Robert, next year. You mentioned it, over $5 million for 5 years. It sounds scary when you see this kind of production, but what do you see the future in Calgary for Yegor?
I mean, he's not going anywhere. That's for sure. I don't know if there's any team in the league that would be willing to trade for him right now. So he's going to be a Calgary Flame for the next little while. I don't think it'll ever get to a point where they have to buy him out. Maybe that happens a couple years down the road, but you certainly hope that that's not the case. So, yeah, I mean, he's a Calgary Flame, and he's got to get it going. And like kind of similar to Rasmus Andersson, like if he just had kind of like an average season and he scores, say, 23, 24 goals instead of 17, and he scores a couple more in the shootout, or he plays better in overtime, like the Calgary Flames are in the playoffs once again. Like he's an important part of this team moving forward, because this is a team that struggles to score goals, and he has the type of shot where he should be scoring at least 23, 24, 25 goals each season. So yeah, the future, with that contract kicking in, it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. I mean, he's really got to turn it around starting as early as next season, and he's got to do it from not just a goal scoring perspective, but just from an all around sort of impact that he has on the game. Like he needs to do more than just kind of glide around out there and get a couple shots on goal every night. Like he needs to provide more to this team for sure.
He better check his rearview mirror, in my opinion, as well, because this winger group on the Flames is obviously stacked. You got lots of guys right now. You could probably name 9 wingers without even trying on this roster right now. And then you look at the prospects coming behind them. We saw Suniev get a game. We saw Klapka taking a step forward. There are guys coming. You need Yegor Sharangovich to solidify himself as maybe a second line center or second line winger who can score goals for you, first line power play stuff, that kind of thing. He needs to be that for the Flames. He needs to have those high expectations and match that, because if he doesn't, he's going to get passed in an absolute hurry. We saw Connor Zary go out a couple of different times this season with injury. I think that allowed Yegor Sharangovich to stay in the lineup because he was getting passed by other guys. We saw Coronado's growth. So the future for Yegor Sharangovich, I can see a bright one if we can provide that 30-goal scoring ability, 25, 30-goal scoring ability. But I also see the future being where he just gets passed over. And he just eventually becomes a guy who's part of your organization in a fourth-line scratch role, and that he might just get put on waivers and sent to the American Hockey League. And that's obviously worst-case scenario. But you can see a number of various different situations happening for Igor if he doesn't get it together here. This is a huge off season for him. No excuses next season coming in there. I expect to see him come back into camp better, because if not, his job's going to go to the way of somebody else. So
yeah, like it can't get really any worse than it was this season. And you make a good point there with people chasing him in his rearview mirror there. You got guys like William Stromgren. I know he didn't have a great finish to the year, but he's a guy pushing. Rory Cairns could be pushing. Sam Honzik will hopefully be pushing. And then you got guys like Ardar Suniev. And then, you'll have this upcoming draft class with the Battaglias, Bashas, Misas of the world, like Matvei Gridin. Like,
yep.
There's a lot of guys pushing for spots over the next 2-3 years here in Calgary. So, yeah, he better get it together, or else he's going to be the odd man out. That's for sure.
He shares a very similar boat to the next guy that we're going to talk about here. And I think we can say a lot of things we said about Sharangovich, we could say about Joel Farabee. He played 31 games with the Flames after the trade and only 6 points. I want to start on this one here, Robert, because I don't really have a lot to say about Farabee, because you want to look at him and you want to be fair, because he played 81 games over the course of the whole season, 25 points between the two franchises. But with the Flames here, I didn't see anything from Farabee that really brought me out of my seat. But yes, that's why he was in this trade. It's a lot of money for a guy who was ho-hum for me. Even down the stretch when you needed guys that depth scoring, he was very ho-hum for me. Playing just over 14 minutes a night for the Flames. He only had 1 power play point. He blocked a few shots, 8 penalty minutes. His shooting percentage was only 5.8. So is there something there that we can help get him better? And he was -5 in a short time with the Flames as well. I give this guy a C- as well, because I just didn't see anything that inspires me about Joe Farabee and about what he brings to the Flames organization. What did you make of Farabee and what he brought or didn't bring to the Calgary Flames?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of right there with you. I mean, there's not a whole heck of a lot to say because he didn't do very much. You take a look at his 82 game point projection with the Flames. It's only 16 points over 82 games. Like you said, 6 points in 31 games. So you extend that out to an 82 game point projection. That's 16 points. Like really, really bad production since joining the Calgary Flames. And the crazy thing is, if you take a look at the salaries from the players from the 24-25 season, he's the 4th highest paid player on the Calgary Flames. Now that's going to change because, guys like Matt Coronado and Kevin Ball and guys like that might pass him in that regard. But, he makes a lot of money. He's got 3 years left on his deal. Like, between a guy like Sharangovich and Farabee, that's over $10 million invested in 2 guys that just haven't done anything this season for the Calgary Flames. So that's a little concerning for me moving forward. And overall, I didn't really get those flashes of brilliance that I kind of saw from, say, for example, from Morgan Frost. Frost, every single game, there'd be like 2 or 3 things that he does, and you're like, okay, like I see it, like I can see there's progression. I can see that there's something there. With Farabee, I didn't really see that really at all. I mean, he had a couple nice games. He scored that beautiful goal against Dallas, but outside of that, I just did not think he did all that much. And, was he snake bitten? Was he lacking confidence from, playing under John Tortorella for so long? Like there's some things some questions that need to be answered there. So basically the way I see it is, I think next season they're going to bring him back and they're going to give him one more try. They're going to see if they can kind of rehabilitate his career. And if things don't go well and he does struggle, my guess is that they would probably just end up buying him out. Because I did the math. I did like the Puckpedia buyout calculator. And if you buy him out in the 2026 offseason, the Flames would save $5 million for the next 2 years. And then the 2 years after that, there would only be a cap charge of $900,000. So basically, if you buy him out, there's really not much of a penalty there. It's only less than $1 million on your cap for the 28 and 29 seasons. So my guess is if he comes in next year and plays well and is that kind of 40, 50 point guy, they'll continue on with him or potentially maybe even look to move him at the deadline. if he plays like absolute crap like he did this year when he joined the Flames, I think it's just a simple buyout and they can kind of wipe their hands with him. So, there's quite a bit of pressure on Joel Farabee to step up and show that he's a $5 million player this year, because, if he doesn't, I could totally see the Flames buying him out. And, I think he kind of loses that ability to earn another big contract in his NHL career. So it's a massive year for Joel Farabee next season.
He has twice eclipsed the 20-goal mark in the National Hockey League, so there is something there. I wonder what a full offseason and training camp with Ryan Huska does for this guy. And like you mentioned, he's going to get all this opportunity in the world. He's very much, for me, in the same canoe as Sharangovich. He's on the wing. He has the potential to be a top 6 guy who can help produce offense, but he's better watch his rearview mirror, because there are guys coming for those jobs, and he might be the first guy out the door if one of those guys takes one of those jobs. And for him, that's a big fall from grace. You've scored 20 in this league twice. We've seen it. Let's see it again. So for me, the future for Joel Farabee is very much up in the air, but also very much in his control with the Calgary Flames. Let's see what he can do in a full off season with the Flames here. The next thing I want to talk about is one of your guys from this past season. And for me, I think he just ran out of gas the longer the season went on. He had a brilliant start. He played very well. At times, he was one of the best 2 Flames defensemen around Christmas, New Year's. He played very, very well. He anchored that third pair down for a long time. Ended up having a couple of healthy scratches, 76 games played for him. He only had 12 points, but he's not a point producer. I think Brayden Pachal, for being a waiver pickup to what the Flames turned him into thus far, not too bad. What do you give him for a letter grade, and what did you make of Pachal's season here overall?
Yeah, I mean, I'd give him a B. I mean, I thought that he was kind of like what you expected from him. He was solid defensively for I would say the overwhelming majority of the season. There was a stretch there where he played like 60 straight games. Like he was one of those guys that Ryan Huska just refused to take out of the lineup. And I think that says a lot, because you take a look at the defense in that bottom pair. Like he was the one guy that stayed there. And you saw Bean and Miramanov and Barry and all these guys were regular healthy scratches, and Pachal wasn't. And I think that says a lot right there. I like the physicality that he plays with. He's 4th on the Flames in hits with 159, and that's not playing a whole heck of a lot of ice time. So, to have 159 hits is pretty impressive. He blocks a lot of shots. He played some decent minutes on the penalty kill this year. So, like you said, for a waiver wire pickup, for a guy who's probably a number 6 or number 7 defenseman on a good team, I thought he was just fine. He did slow down, I thought, a little bit at the end of the season, but it wasn't to the point where he was like a detriment to the team or anything like that. So yeah, I mean, overall, I thought he was good for his role. I don't think he's much of a difference maker for this team, as number 6 defensemen aren't for other teams, but
yeah.
just for what he is, he's totally fine. He doesn't make a lot of money. I think his next contract, he's like just over $1 million on a 2-year deal, which isn't all that bad. So yeah, I mean, overall, solid season from Brayden Pachal, and I could see him being kind of the number 6, number 7 defenseman on the Flames next season, easily.
For what he was expected of him, for where he came from and how the Flames acquired him, for the contract he was playing on this year, I give him a B+, because I think he exceeded his expectations a little bit. He did, like I mentioned, run out of gas, I think, at the end of the season here, but he had never played this many games in an NHL season before. You're talking 10 games, 17 games, 33 games to 76 games. So it's a big jump in games, over double what he played last year for the Flames. I liked him. I really did like him. I really did like what he brought to the lineup for the Flames, anchoring that third pair. He played a lot with Jake Bean. Make of Jake Bean what you will. He was able to play with Miramanov at times and was fine with that. He played with Hanley at times. He put multiple partners and still being able to be effective for the Flames. Just what they needed. He's a perfect 6-7 for me, in my opinion, at this point of his career. The $1 million+ that he's going to make next year is perfect for him. Slot him in there, let him do the same thing again, and see if he can continually progress at the job given to him. I think his future with the Flames is just that, a depth defenseman, a guy who can be part of the lineup, a guy that he can anchor a third pair on, and a guy that can help not drowned when your top guys need a rest off the ice. Uyghur can't play 45 minutes. Well, he probably could play 45 minutes. You don't want Uyghur to play 45 minutes a night, and guys like Pachal are going to have to take some of those minutes to help keep his minutes down.
My only thing with Pachal
Yeah.
is, so they signed to this 2-year deal, which is fine.
Yeah.
But you hope that he doesn't block a spot for a young
100%.
defenseman moving forward. Like, whether it's a Hunter Burstevich over the next year or two, or Ilya Solovyov or Kuznetsov, whoever it may be, you just hope he doesn't block a spot, almost like Anthony Mantha did this year with Matt Coronado.
Yeah.
So as long as the Flames treat Pachal like he's a depth defenseman, they're not going to play him over a young player if that young player deserves to be in the lineup. That's totally cool. But if he does end up blocking a spot, then I think there might be a little bit of an issue there.
And for the listeners, Robert stole my notes there because that's exactly where I was going with it as well. This is a guy that you can pair with a Solovyov or a Kuznetsov, and you feel okay with that being a mentorship type of situation. But a guy that I think that contract is cheap enough that he could sit for a few games and allow these young kids to play. And if a kid earns it over top of him, I don't think there's any problem with putting Pachal in the press box to allow that kid to play if Burstevich is there and deserves an opportunity here. It's a guy on a good contract who provided really good for the Flames this year, and I think down the road here for the Flames, he can do a lot for this team as well for Ryan Huska's crew here. Anything else on Pachal here before we jump on to the last guy here?
No, let's move on to the last one.
All right, this last guy, he took it in the teeth from a lot of people, a lot of years, but I have to give him a lot of credit for the job that he did down the stretch for the Flames. He didn't get to play a ton for the Flames down the stretch because he was watching his counterpart take over hockey games and almost blew the Flames into the playoffs himself. Talking about Dan Vladar for the job that he did this year. Up and down year for sure. Down the stretch, I think he got a lot better. What do you make of Dan Vladar, the year that he had, what he provided the Flames here for the team, and what letter grade are you giving the Flames backup netminder?
Yeah, I give him like a C plus. I mean, yes, for me, it's like, okay, basically the way I'd break it down is like a tale of two seasons. You have October through February, and then you have March through April. And October through February, I thought Vladar was not very good. I thought he was a below average goalie. Had a pretty high goals against average, save percentage under 900. And I just didn't think that he gave the Flames a lot of chances to win in those first 5 months of the year. Granted, in like the first month or two, he was playing second to back-to-backs and all that kind of stuff. But that was his job. His job was to protect Dustin Wolf to start the season, and he did that. So, and then you have, March through April where he was really good. Like in his last 6 starts, he went 4-1-1. Had a 920 save percentage and a 2.14 goals against average, and actually had better numbers than Dustin Wolf over that time. So he had a really strong finish. But when you take a look at the entire body of work for Dan Vladar throughout his time in Calgary, it has been underwhelming. He's only been over 900, only had over a 900 save percentage one time, and that was in the 21-22 season when they were the best defensive team in hockey. Every other year outside of that, he's been below 900. His goals against is always in the high 2s or the kind of mid 3s. I really believe that Dan Vladar he's a backup goalie in the NHL, and I don't think there's much upside outside of that. So if I'm the Flames, I do not bring Dan Vladar back. I think he's shown in his 4 years here that his ceiling is a guy that can probably start 28 to 30 games and give you below 900 save percentage. And I just don't know if that's good enough. Like I wonder if a guy like Devin Cooley can have a higher ceiling than Vladar. Like you take a look at Cooley's numbers when he was healthy, he was literally the best player in the AHL. And then he ran into injury issues, and the Wranglers in front of him were decimated, and his numbers fell off a cliff. But I really believe that he has the potential to have a higher ceiling than Dan Vladar. And the thing is, if you move on from Vladar and you give Cooley a try and it doesn't work, you go out and find another Dan Vladar. Like it's not that hard. There's a ton of Dan Vladars out there. Like, there's 64 goalie spots in the NHL. I would rank Vladar in kind of like the 50-ish range. Like he'd be in that kind of 45 to 55 range in terms of quality of goalie. And I just think the Flames could do better than that. And so I'm on the boat where they should move on from Dan Vladar. I know there's lots of people out there that love this guy, and he seems like a good dude, and that's great. But I just think that there's potential there for a better goaltender than what Vladar is going to give you. That's just kind of how I feel about it.
A good dude only gets you so far, right? You got to get performances on the ice. And we saw at the end of the year that Dan, he put together a nice stretch for the Flames and showed what he could bring to the table in a short sample size. And so for what he was asked to do this year for the Flames, he was okay. He was just fine. He gets the passing grade of a C for me. He did have a really good end of the year, so I probably bumps his grade up a little bit, but he's a backup netminder, and he's one of about 45 guys in the league that can do that job. I honestly think that. And nothing against Dan Vladar. If they brought him back next year on a 1-year contract, I wouldn't really get bent out of shape over it. But there's other guys. The Flames signed 2 college goaltenders this offseason so far. They have Devin Cooley coming on a 1-way contract next year. They have Ignatieff that has been with the team all year long with the Wranglers. They've got tons of these guys in the pipeline here. At a certain time, you have to find out what is behind Dan Vladar. And what we're hearing is how much the Flames love Dan Vladar and how much they think they want to bring this guy back for. But what's that going to cost you in free agency? You're probably looking at multi-year contract if you're bringing him back. And for me, that's the part that doesn't make sense. You have all these other goaltenders coming, these lottery tickets behind Dan Vladar and behind Devin Cooley coming. Why would you pigeonhole yourself in bringing Dan Vladar back on a 3-year contract? Even a 2-year contract, it's going to block someone. At this point in time, you have to know and find out what you have in Devin Cooley. What is Ignatieff? What is all of these other kids behind them? So I'm with you on this one, Robert, 100%. I like Dan Vladar. I thought he was fine as a backup goaltender. I think that's exactly what he is at this level. I just think he needs to be a backup somewhere else next year because Dustin Wolf is going to get that net. And so you need a guy who can come in here, play your 25 to 30 games and be a good backup goaltender to Dustin Wolf. And Devin Cooley could definitely be that, I think. And if not, like you mentioned, you can go and find yourself a backup goaltender. It's not that hard in the National Hockey League. The cost isn't that hard either in the National Hockey League to find it. And I think, and I've been on the Cooley wagon all year since they signed him, I think there is something there with Devin Cooley. I don't think it's a Vezina winner, but I think there is an NHL-capable goaltender with number 1. So Dan Vladar is a good soldier. He did a lot of good for the Flames, but I think it's time to move on here because you saw what we got at Dan Vladar, and it was just average NHL backup goaltending.
Yeah, and like for me, he's just too inconsistent. Like I find with Vladar, he goes on these long stretches where he's just not playing well. The numbers are down in the dumps, but then all of a sudden he'll go on like a 3 or 4 week heater, and then he'll go for 2 or 3 months and he'll really struggle, and then he'll go on a heater, and it's just like you need a little more consistency from your backup goalie. So because of that, once again, I would move on from him. He's been he seems like a really good guy. He's been a good teammate by all accounts. Like I don't know if he does any work in the community or not, but like. Once again, it's similar to Rasmus Andersson. You've gotten some decent years out of Dan Vladar. It's okay to move on from him. I don't see any reason why they really should bring him back.
Absolutely. Over the course of the next few weeks, we will break down more and more of these players. We go through the entire roster, giving them all letter grades. That's it for this week on the players we have on the docket here. Robert, what's coming up from you at flamesnation.ca and on the Nation Network here?
Yeah, lots of off-season content at Flames Nation on social media. So just follow around for that, and then I'll also have some written report cards coming probably within the next couple weeks here. So be on the lookout for that as well.
And if you're a Blue Jays fan, make sure you follow that Blue Jays Nation and get mad at all of their social media content that Robert puts out for them as well.
Thanks for that.
You got it. Follow Robert at Ring of Fire CGY on social media. I'm Vintage Johnny 84, and of course the show at Red Mile Rundown wherever you like to do your social media postings. Thank you all so much for your love support on the podcast. Don't forget to hit those 5-star ratings and reviews. We will see you next week on the show